Most people know how the Viking Age begins. In the year 793, Viking warriors crossed the North Sea and attacked the monastery of Lindisfarne. The raid shocked Christian Europe and became one of the most famous moments in medieval history. But history rarely begins with the event we remember. The attack on Lindisfarne did not happen in isolation. For decades before the first Viking longship appeared on the English coast, another conflict was already underway. Across northern Europe, Christian rulers were expanding their kingdoms through military conquest, forced conversion, and the destruction of pagan religions. Entire sacred groves were burned, temples were destroyed, ancient gods were outlawed, thousands of pagans were compelled to accept Christianity or die. This is the story that unfolded before the Vikings became famous. To understand why Scandinavia eventually exploded into the Viking Age, we first have to understand what was happening just beyond Denmark's southern border. Around the middle of the 8th century, Europe was divided by far more than political boundaries. Religion defined civilizations. To the south and west, Christianity had become the dominant faith. Kings increasingly ruled with the support of bishops and monasteries. Churches spread alongside royal authority, and conversion often accompanied conquest. But north of the Frankish frontier lived peoples who still followed their ancestral religions. The Saxons worshipped gods such as Woden, Thunor, and Tiwa. Across the Baltic, many Slavic and Baltic tribes remained pagan. Farther north, the Danes and other Scandinavian peoples continued to honor Odin, Thor, Freyr, and the old traditions that had been passed down for generations. These pagan societies were not isolated. They traded with Christians, they fought Christians, and they watched events unfolding to the south very closely. Everything changed with one ruler. Charlemagne inherited the Frankish kingdom in 768 and quickly transformed it into the largest empire Western Europe had seen since Rome. His ambitions extended far beyond politics. He viewed himself as the protector and defender of Christianity. Military conquest and religious expansion became closely linked. As Frankish armies marched outward, churches and monasteries followed. Victory on the battlefield often meant the establishment of Christian authority in newly conquered lands. For neighboring pagan peoples, the Frankish Empire represented more than a powerful kingdom. It represented an expanding religious civilization whose leaders increasingly believed paganism should disappear. The Saxons occupied a crucial position in northern Europe. Their homelands stretched along the frontier between the Frankish Empire and Denmark. Unlike distant peoples, the Saxons shared close cultural ties with the Danes. They spoke related Germanic languages, their religious beliefs overlapped. Many of their customs resembled those practiced across Scandinavia. When conflict erupted between Charlemagne and the Saxons, the Danes were not observing strangers. They were watching people who looked, worshipped, and lived much like themselves. The fate of the Saxons would send a powerful message across northern Europe. Beginning in 772, Charlemagne launched a campaign against the Saxons that would continue for more than 30 years. The conflict became one of the longest and bloodiest wars of the early Middle Ages. The Saxons repeatedly resisted Frankish control. After every rebellion, Frankish armies returned. Entire regions were devastated. Communities were relocated. Hostages were taken. Religious conversion increasingly became part of military victory. The objective was no longer simply political submission. It was religious transformation. One of the earliest symbolic acts of the war was the destruction of the Irminsul. Although historians continue to debate its exact appearance, medieval sources describe it as one of the Saxons' most sacred religious sites. Whether it was a towering pillar, sacred tree, or monumental shrine, it represented the spiritual identity of the Saxon people. Charlemagne ordered it destroyed. To Christians, this demonstrated the triumph of their god. To the Saxons, it was an attack upon the center of their religious world. The destruction of sacred places would become a recurring strategy during Christian expansion throughout Europe. Following military victories, thousands of Saxons underwent baptism. Some undoubtedly converted willingly, others almost certainly did not. Charlemagne issued laws making pagan practices punishable by death. Refusing baptism could carry severe penalties. Traditional sacrifices became illegal. Ancient religious customs were outlawed. Modern historians continue to debate how many conversions reflected genuine belief and how many resulted from military coercion. What is clear is that religion had become inseparable from conquest. Perhaps the most controversial event of the Saxon Wars occurred in 782. According to the Royal Frankish Annals, Charlemagne ordered the execution of approximately 4,500 captured Saxons after another uprising. Some modern historians debate the exact number. Others question whether medieval chroniclers exaggerated the event. Nevertheless, contemporary Frankish sources clearly portray a large-scale execution following rebellion. Whether the number was precisely accurate or somewhat inflated, the message was unmistakable. Resistance would be met with overwhelming force. News of these campaigns almost certainly spread beyond Saxony. The Danes were watching events unfold only a short distance from their own frontier. By the beginning of the 9th century, the Saxons had largely been subdued. Christian churches spread throughout former pagan territory. The Frankish frontier now reached the Danish border. For Scandinavia, the implications were impossible to ignore. An expanding Christian empire had conquered neighboring pagans. Their sacred places had been destroyed, their religion outlawed, their people baptized under military occupation. The Danes had every reason to wonder whether they would someday face the same fate. Whether this fear directly inspired Viking expansion remains a subject of historical debate. Many factors contributed to the Viking Age, including trade, political ambition, shipbuilding technology, and opportunities abroad. But the religious and military pressure building along Denmark's southern frontier formed an important part of the world the Vikings inherited.